In a distant galaxy, far beyond the reach of human telescopes, the Zorathians, a race of beings so advanced their technology seemed like magic, set their sights on a project that would change the course of their history forever. They called it Project Genesis, a secret initiative to create the ultimate soldiers, warriors engineered to be unstoppable, unfeeling, and utterly loyal. But when the first batch of clones emerged from their incubation pods, something went terribly wrong. These weren't the mindless killing machines the Zorathians had envisioned. No, they were something far more unpredictable, far more dangerous. They were human, fully sentient, fully aware, and demanding answers about who they were and why they existed. What began as a mission to dominate the stars quickly spiraled into chaos, as the Zorathians found themselves face to face with a force they couldn't control: humanity itself. Stay with us as we unravel the story of how an alien race's attempt to clone soldiers gave birth to a new kind of rebellion, one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about life, war, and the indomitable spirit of humankind. By the end of this video, you'll discover why the Zorathians' greatest mistake might just be their undoing, and how the essence of humanity can never be replicated, only unleashed. As the incubation pods hissed open, a tense silence filled the sterile laboratory. Commander Veyra, her sharp eyes scanning the rows of pods, stood at the center of the room, flanked by her team of Zorathian scientists. They had expected the clones to emerge as silent, obedient soldiers, ready to follow orders without question. But what happened next shattered their expectations. The clones stirred, their eyes snapping open with a clarity that sent a ripple of unease through the room. Before anyone could react, one of them spoke, a language none of the Zorathians recognized. It was English, a tongue long forgotten in the vast expanse of the galaxy. The lead clone, a figure who would later call himself Alex, stepped forward, his voice steady but laced with defiance. "Who are we? Why are we here?" he demanded, his gaze locking onto Veyra's. The room seemed to freeze. The Zorathians exchanged uneasy glances, their carefully laid plans unraveling before their eyes. These weren't mindless drones. They were beings with thoughts, emotions, and a burning need for answers. Veyra, though visibly shaken, masked her surprise with a cold, calculating demeanor. "You are soldiers," she replied, her tone firm but tinged with uncertainty, "created to serve the Zorathian Empire." But Alex wasn't satisfied. "Soldiers." He shot back, "We're more than that. We remember fragments, a world called Earth, a people called humans. What have you done to us?" The tension in the room was palpable. The clones, now fully awake, began to gather around Alex, their expressions a mix of confusion and determination. Veyra's mind raced. This wasn't just a malfunction, it was a revelation. The cloning process had tapped into something ancient, something far beyond their understanding. And as the clones pressed for answers, it became clear that this was no longer just a scientific experiment. It was the beginning of a confrontation that would challenge the very foundations of the Zorathian Empire. As the standoff continued, the clones' questions grew louder, their demands more insistent. Veyra, caught between her duty and the unsettling truth staring her in the face, realized one thing: these beings weren't just clones, they were something far more dangerous. They were human, and humanity, as she would soon learn, was a force that could not be controlled. With the stage set for a clash of wills, the Zorathians found themselves facing a question they had never anticipated. What happens when the creation refuses to obey its creator? The answer, as they would soon discover, lies in the unyielding spirit of humanity, a spirit that refuses to be silenced. As the tension in the laboratory reached its peak, Veyra made a decision. She needed answers, and there was only one way to get them. With a sharp gesture, she ordered her scientists to step back, leaving her alone with the lead clone, Alex. The room seemed to shrink as the two faced each other, the air thick with unspoken questions. "Tell me," Veyra began, her voice low but commanding, "what do you remember? What is this Earth you speak of?" Alex hesitated for a moment, his brow furrowing as if sifting through a fog of half-formed memories. "I remember a blue planet," he said slowly, his voice tinged with both wonder and frustration. "Oceans, cities, people, I remember humanity, but it's like pieces of a puzzle, scattered and incomplete. I don't know how or why, but I know we came from there." Veyra's expression hardened, but beneath her stoic exterior, a flicker of doubt began to take root. "Impossible," she muttered, more to herself than to Alex. "The cloning process was designed to create soldiers, not this," but Alex wasn't finished. "You think you created us," he said, his tone sharpening. "But what if you didn't? What if you just woke us up? What if our DNA, our very essence, was already out there, waiting to be found?" The words hung in the air like a challenge, forcing Veyra to confront a possibility she had never considered. Could the cloning process have tapped into something far older, far more mysterious than they had anticipated? The idea was unsettling, but it also made a strange kind of sense. The Zorathians had always believed their technology was unparalleled, but what if they had stumbled upon something beyond their comprehension? As the interrogation continued, Alex's fragmented memories painted a picture of a civilization long lost to time, a civilization that had once thrived on Earth. He spoke of wars, of triumphs, of a species that had reached for the stars and perhaps left something behind. Veyra listened, her mind racing. If Alex's memories were real, then the implications were staggering. The Zorathians hadn't just created clones, they had resurrected a legacy, but with that realization came a new wave of uncertainty. If the clones were truly human, then they were far more than mere soldiers. They were beings with a history, a purpose, and a will of their own. And as Veyra looked into Alex's eyes, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was no longer in control. The interrogation ended with more questions than answers, leaving Veyra and her team to grapple with a truth they were unprepared to face. The cloning process had not gone as planned. Instead of creating obedient soldiers, they had awakened something far more powerful, the indomitable spirit of humanity. And as the clones began to piece together their past, the Zorathians found themselves standing on the edge of a revelation that would change everything. With the mystery of Earth's ancient DNA now at the forefront, the stage was set for a deeper exploration of the cosmos' hidden secrets and the role humanity might play in its unfolding story. As the weight of Alex's revelations settled over the facility, the clones began to stir with a newfound sense of purpose. The Zorathians had underestimated them, seeing them as mere experiments, but the truth was far more dangerous. The clones were human, and humans were not easily controlled. With a quiet determination, Alex gathered the others, his voice low but steady. "We're not staying here," he said, his eyes scanning the group. "We're more than what they made us to be. It's time we showed them what that means." The plan was simple but bold. Using their knowledge of the facility's lay, outgleaned from stolen glances and overheard conversations, the clones identified weak points in the Zorathian security system. They moved swiftly, their actions coordinated with an almost instinctive precision. One group distracted the guards, while another sabotaged the surveillance systems. Alex led the charge, his mind racing as he pieced together the steps of their escape. The Zorathian guards, trained for obedience and efficiency, were unprepared for the clones' unpredictability. Where they expected brute force, they encountered cunning. Where they anticipated fear, they found resolve. The clones used their environment to their advantage, turning the sterile, high-tech facility into a maze of confusion. At one point, a guard cornered Alex, his weapon raised, but before he could fire, another clone appeared from behind, disarming him with a swift, calculated move. It was a moment of perfect teamwork, a reminder of the strength that came from their shared humanity. As the clones neared the facility's exit, alarms blared and Veyra's voice crackled over the intercom, sharp with fury. "Seal the exits, do not let them escape," but it was too late. The clones had already breached the final barrier, their escape route secured by a combination of ingenuity and sheer willpower. Outside, the alien city sprawled before them, a labyrinth of towering structures and unfamiliar technology. The clones hesitated for only a moment before disappearing into the shadows, their movements fluid and deliberate. They were free, but their freedom came at a cost. Veyra's rage was palpable, her orders echoing through the facility as she mobilized every resource to hunt them down. Back in the control room, Veyra stared at the empty pods, her fists clenched. "This isn't over," she muttered, her voice a mix of anger and disbelief. "They may have escaped, but they can't hide forever. We will find them, and we will make them pay for this." Meanwhile, the clones regrouped in the city's underbelly, their breaths heavy but their spirits unbroken. Alex looked at the group, his expression resolute. "This is just the beginning," he said. "We've taken our first step, but the fight isn't over. We need to find out who we are and why we're here. And we need to do it before the Zorathians catch up to us." The escape had been a victory, but it was only the first chapter in a much larger story. The clones had proven their resilience, but the challenges ahead would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. And as they vanished into the alien city, one thing was clear: the Zorathians had awakened something they could not control. The spirit of humanity was alive, and it would not be silenced. With the facility behind them and the city ahead, the clones prepared for the next phase of their journey, a journey that would uncover not only their own origins, but also the secrets of a galaxy that had long forgotten humanity's place among the stars. As the clones navigated the alien city's labyrinthine streets, their focus shifted from survival to discovery. Hidden beneath the towering structures and bustling alien activity, they stumbled upon an entrance to an underground chamber, a relic of the facility they had escaped. The air inside was thick with dust, and the walls bore strange markings that seemed to pulse faintly with energy. Alex stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he examined the symbols. "This isn't Zorathian," he said, his voice tinged with curiosity. "It's something older, something human." The group moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the dimly lit space. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, its surface etched with intricate designs. As Alex approached, the pedestal activated, projecting a holographic image of a figure cloaked in ancient garb. The figure spoke in a language the clones instinctively understood: English. To those who find this message, the figure began, "Know that you are not alone. Long ago, humanity spread across the stars, forging alliances and facing great dangers, but our greatest mistake was underestimating the consequences of our own creations. Cloning was meant to preserve life, but it became a weapon, a tool of war that nearly destroyed us all." The clones exchanged uneasy glances as the hologram continued. "The galaxy is on the brink of another conflict, one that could consume all life. If you are hearing this, it means our legacy has survived, and you are the key to preventing history from repeating itself. Unite, resist, and remember, the strength of humanity lies not in its power to dominate, but in its ability to endure." The hologram flickered and faded, leaving the clones in stunned silence. Alex stepped back, his mind racing. "This changes everything," he said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. We're not just experiments, we're part of something bigger. A warning, a call to action. One of the clones, a woman named Veyra, spoke up. But how do we unite humanity? We don't even know if there are others like us out there. Alex turned to her, his expression resolute. We start by finding out. If there's a chance that other human colonies or survivors exist, we need to reach them. And if the Zorathians are planning something that could threaten the galaxy, we have to stop them. The discovery of the holographic message had given the clones a new sense of purpose. No longer were they merely fugitives, they were inheritors of a legacy, bearers of a warning that could shape the fate of the galaxy. As they left the chamber, the weight of their responsibility settled over them, but so too did a renewed determination. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the clones were no longer running from their past. They were stepping into a future they had the power to shape. And as they emerged from the underground chamber, the alien city no longer felt like a prison. It felt like the beginning of a mission. With the hologram's words echoing in their minds, the clones prepared to take their next steps, knowing that the fight for humanity's survival had only just begun. As the clones began to piece together their next move, the Zorathians were already mobilizing. Commander Veyra, furious and determined, stood in the control room of the facility, her sharp gaze fixed on the holographic map of the city. "They're out there," she said, her voice cold and commanding, "and they won't stay hidden for long. Deploy every resource we have: drones, trackers, patrols. I want them found and brought back, alive if possible, dead if necessary." The Zorathian forces sprang into action, their advanced technology humming to life. Drones equipped with thermal scanners and motion detectors took to the skies, while ground units armed with tracking devices began combing the city's sprawling streets. The hunt was on, and the clones were now the most wanted beings in the galaxy. Meanwhile, Alex and the others had already anticipated the Zorathians' response. They moved swiftly through the alien cityscape, their human instincts guiding them. The towering structures and bustling alien crowds provided the perfect cover. "Stick together, but don't draw attention," Alex instructed, his voice low. "We're strangers here, but that doesn't mean we can't blend in." The clones adapted quickly, mimicking the behavior of the alien inhabitants. They moved with purpose but without haste, their faces obscured by hoods and makeshift coverings. When a drone buzzed overhead, they ducked into the shadows, their breathing steady and controlled. When a patrol passed by, they melted into the crowd, their movements fluid and unremarkable. Veyra, ever observant, noticed a group of alien merchants setting up a stall in a nearby plaza. "Over there," she whispered, gesturing subtly. "If we can get closer, we might be able to overhear something useful." The clones approached cautiously, their ears tuned to the alien chatter. Though the language was foreign, the tone and urgency were unmistakable. "They're talking about us," Alex murmured. "The Zorathians are offering rewards for information. We need to move before someone decides to turn us in." As they slipped away from the plaza, the clones relied on their resourcefulness to stay one step ahead. They scavenged discarded clothing to better blend in, repurposed alien tech to create makeshift tools, and even used the city's labyrinthine layout to their advantage. Every decision was calculated, every action deliberate, but the Zorathians were relentless. A drone scanner locked onto their heat signatures, and within moments, a patrol was closing in. "This way," Alex hissed, leading the group into a narrow alley. They moved quickly, their hearts pounding as the sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind them. At the end of the alley, they found a maintenance hatch leading into the city's underground tunnels. Without hesitation, they pried it open and slipped inside. sealing it behind them just as the patrol rounded the corner. The clones paused, listening as the footsteps faded above them. "We can't stay here," Alex said, his voice steady despite the tension. "But we can't keep running blindly either. We need a plan, a way to turn the tables on them." The clones nodded, their resolve unshaken. They had survived the Zorathians' first wave of pursuit, but they knew the hunt was far from over. As they moved deeper into the tunnels, the city above felt both like a prison and a battlefield. But for the clones, it was also a proving ground, a place where their human ingenuity and adaptability would be tested like never before. And as they disappeared into the shadows, one thing was certain: the Zorathians had underestimated them. The clones weren't just surviving. They were learning, adapting, and preparing to fight back. The hunt had begun, but the game was far from over. As the clones navigated the dimly lit tunnels beneath the city, the air grew heavier with tension. The faint hum of distant machinery echoed around them, a constant reminder of the Zorathians' reach. Just as they began to discuss their next move, a sudden rustling sound broke the silence. Shadows shifted, and before they could react, a group of figures emerged from the darkness. Aliens, but unlike any they had seen before. Their attire was rugged, their expressions wary, and their weapons drawn but not aimed. One of the aliens stepped forward, their voice low but firm. "You're not Zorathians," they said, their eyes narrowing as they studied the clones. "But you're not from here either." "Who are you?" Alex raised his hand slowly, signaling peace. "We're not your enemies," he replied, his tone calm but cautious. "We're trying to survive just like you." "The Zorathians are hunting us." The alien leader tilted their head, considering his words. After a tense moment, they lowered their weapons slightly. "You're the clones, aren't you?" "The ones they've been chasing across the city." The clones exchanged uneasy glances, but Alex nodded. "Yes, and if you're not with the Zorathians, then maybe we can help each other." The alien leader hesitated, then gestured for their group to stand down. "We've been watching you," they admitted. "You've managed to evade the Zorathians longer than most." "That's impressive, but if you think you're the first experiment they've tried, you're wrong." Alex frowned. "What do you mean?" The alien stepped closer, their voice dropping to a whisper. "The Zorathians have been experimenting with cloning for centuries. They've tried to create soldiers, workers, even leaders, but every time, the clones develop free will. They rebel, and every time the Zorathians destroy them and start over." The clones fell silent, the weight of the revelation sinking in. Mara was the first to speak. "So we're not the first, but we're the first to escape." The alien nodded. "Exactly, and that makes you dangerous to them, but it also makes you valuable to us. We've been fighting the Zorathians for years, trying to expose their experiments and free those they've enslaved. If you're willing to join us, we might just stand a chance." Alex glanced at the others, seeing the same determination in their eyes. "We're in," he said firmly, "but this isn't just about survival anymore. If the Zorathians have been doing this for centuries, then it's time someone stopped them for good." The alien leader extended a hand, a faint smile breaking through their stern expression. "Welcome to the Resistance." As the clones and rebels began to exchange information, the atmosphere shifted from tension to cautious optimism. The rebels shared maps of the city, details about Zorathian patrols, and even plans for a potential strike on a key facility. In return, the clones offered their unique perspective and skills, their human ingenuity proving to be an asset the rebels hadn't anticipated. But even as they forged this uneasy alliance, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the stakes had just gotten higher. The Zorathians weren't just hunting them, they were trying to erase a legacy of failure. And now, with the rebels by their side, the clones had a chance to turn that failure into a victory. As the group prepared to move out, Alex turned to the alien leader. "What's your name?" he asked. The alien paused, then replied, "Kale, and if we're going to do this, we'll need to trust each other. No secrets, no hesitation." Alex nodded, agreed. "Let's make sure the Zorathians regret ever creating us." With that, the unlikely alliance set off into the tunnels, their shared goal uniting them despite their differences. The Zorathians had underestimated the clones before, but now, with the rebels at their side, the balance of power was beginning to shift. And as they disappeared into the shadows once more, one thing was clear: the fight for freedom had just entered a new phase. As the alliance between the clones and the rebels solidified, their shared determination to strike back against the Zorathians grew stronger. The rebels had identified a key target, a Zorathian supply depot on the outskirts of the city. Packed with weapons, resources, and critical intel, it was the perfect opportunity to weaken their enemy while strengthening their own forces. The plan was straightforward but risky. Under the cover of darkness, the clones and rebels would infiltrate the depot, disable its security systems, and make off with as much as they could carry. Kale, the rebel leader, had spent hours briefing the group on the layout, patrol routes, and potential weak points. Alex and the clones brought their unique perspective, suggesting creative ways to exploit the Zorathians' predictable patterns. As the group approached the depot, the tension was palpable. The facility loomed ahead, its towering walls illuminated by harsh floodlights. The clones moved with precision, their training kicking in as they disabled the outer defenses. The rebels followed closely, their familiarity with Zorathian technology proving invaluable. Inside the depot, the team split into smaller groups, each tasked with securing specific resources. Alex led one group toward the armory, while Mara and Kale headed for the data terminals. The operation was going smoothly, until it wasn't. Just as the clones began loading weapons onto a stolen transport, alarms blared throughout the facility. The floodlights shifted, bathing the area in blinding light. From the shadows emerged Commander Veyra, flanked by a squad of heavily armed Zorathian soldiers. "Did you really think it would be this easy?" Veyra sneered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We've been tracking you since you left the tunnels." The clones and rebels scrambled to regroup, but the Zorathians had the upper hand. Veyra's forces moved with ruthless efficiency, cutting off escape routes and isolating the intruders. In the ensuing firefight, several clones were captured, their cries of defiance echoing as they were dragged away. Alex and the remaining members of the team fought desperately to hold their ground, but it was clear the mission had failed. Kale shouted for a retreat, his voice barely audible over the din of blaster fire. Reluctantly, the group fell back, abandoning their hard-won supplies and leaving their captured comrades behind. As they fled into the night, the weight of their failure hung heavy. Alex clenched his fists, his mind racing. They had underestimated Veyra, and now their friends were paying the price. But even in the face of defeat, a spark of resolve remained. Kale placed a hand on Alex's shoulder, his expression grim but determined. "This isn't over," he said. "We'll get them back, but next time we'll be ready." Alex nodded, his jaw set. The Zorathians had won this round, but the fight was far from finished. As the group disappeared into the shadows once more, one thing was certain: the stakes had never been higher, and the cost of failure had never been clearer. With the echoes of the ambush still ringing in their ears, the clones and rebels began to regroup, their resolve hardened by the loss. The mission had gone awry, but it had also revealed a critical truth: the Zorathians were more prepared than they had anticipated. And if they were going to turn the tide, they would need to adapt, and quickly. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the group began to plan their next move. The fight for freedom was far from over, and the battle for survival had just entered a new, more dangerous phase. As the group regrouped in the safety of their hidden base, the air was thick with tension and determination. The failed mission at the supply depot had left scars, but it had also ignited a fierce resolve. Alex stood at the center of the room, his eyes scanning the faces of the clones and rebels. The loss of their comrades weighed heavily on everyone, but Alex knew they couldn't afford to dwell on it. "Veyra thinks she's won," Alex began, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "She thinks we'll back down after this, but we're not going to let her keep our people. We're going to get them back." The room fell silent as Alex laid out his plan. The Zorathian prison ship, a heavily fortified vessel orbiting the planet, was where the captured clones were being held. Breaking into it would be nearly impossible, but not if they struck at the right moment. Using intel gathered by the rebels, Alex proposed a daring infiltration during the ship's routine supply transfer, when security would be at its most vulnerable. Kale raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "That ship is a fortress, Alex. Even with the supply transfer, getting in and out without being detected is a long shot." "It's a risk," Alex admitted, "but it's our only shot, and we've got something the Zorathians don't expect us. We're not just soldiers, we're humans. We adapt, we improvise, and we don't leave our own behind." The rebels exchanged glances, their hesitation slowly giving way to nods of agreement. The clones, meanwhile, stood firm, their determination unwavering. They had come too far to let fear dictate their actions. As the plan took shape, the group divided into specialized teams. Mara and a handful of rebels would hack into the ship's systems to disable its defenses, while Kale and his fighters would create a diversion to draw the guards away from the prison block. Alex, along with a small team of clones, would lead the rescue operation, relying on their combat skills and quick thinking to navigate the ship's labyrinthine corridors. The night before the mission, Alex found himself standing alone, staring at the stars. The weight of leadership pressed heavily on his shoulders, but he couldn't afford to falter. Behind him, Mara approached, her expression a mix of concern and resolve. "You know this could go sideways fast," she said quietly. Alex nodded. "It could. But if we don't try, we're no better than the Zorathians. We can't let them break us." Mara placed a hand on his shoulder, a silent gesture of solidarity. "Then we'll make sure it doesn't go sideways. We've got your back, Alex." As the first light of dawn broke, the team moved into position. The prison ship loomed overhead, its sleek, menacing silhouette a stark reminder of the challenge ahead. The supply transfer was underway, and the rebels' intel had been spot on. Security was lighter than usual, but not by much. The operation began with Mara's team infiltrating the ship's systems, their fingers flying over holographic interfaces as they worked to disable the alarms and security protocols. Kale's diversion team struck moments later, drawing a significant portion of the guards away from the prison block. Alex and his team moved swiftly, their movements precise and deliberate. The ship's corridors were a maze of steel and shadows, but the clones' training and instincts guided them forward. They encountered minimal resistance, taking down the few guards they met with quiet efficiency. When they finally reached the prison block, the sight of their captured comrades filled them with both relief and rage. The clones were battered but unbroken, their spirits defiant even in captivity. "Took you long enough," one of the captured clones joked weakly as Alex unlocked their cell. "Next time, try not to get caught," Alex replied with a faint smile, though his eyes betrayed the gravity of the situation. The escape was anything but smooth. As the team retraced their steps, alarms blared and the ship's remaining guards closed in. the clones and rebels fought their way through, their bond and determination shining as they protected one another. By the time they reached the extraction point, the team was battered but intact. The rescued clones were safely aboard the rebel transport, and the group made their escape just as the Zorathian reinforcements arrived. As the ship sped away from the prison vessel, Alex allowed himself a moment of quiet triumph. They had done the impossible, but the fight was far from over. The Zorathians would retaliate, and the clones and rebels would need to be ready. For now, though, they had won a crucial victory. The rescued clones were safe, and the group's bond had never been stronger. As the stars blurred past the transport's windows, Alex knew one thing for certain: no matter what came next, they would face it together. With the prison ship fading into the distance, the team began to regroup and plan their next move. The stakes were higher than ever, but so was their resolve. The fight for freedom was far from over, and the clones were ready to prove that humanity's spirit could not be broken. As the team regrouped aboard the rebel transport, the adrenaline of their narrow escape began to fade, replaced by a quiet determination. Alex, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something about the mission had been off. The Zorathians' security protocols, their reactions, it all felt too calculated, too deliberate. While the others tended to the rescued clones, Alex slipped away to a quiet corner of the ship, pulling up the data pad he'd managed to swipe from the prison ship's control room. The screen flickered to life, displaying a series of encrypted files. It took Alex a moment to bypass the security, but when he did, what he found stopped him cold. The files weren't just logs or schematics, they were records, detailed, meticulous records of the Zorathians' cloning experiments, stretching back decades. As Alex scrolled through the data, his heart began to race. The clones weren't just random genetic constructs, they were something far more specific. The Zorathians had used DNA samples from Earth's ancient warriors, soldiers, strategists, and leaders who had once shaped human history. Names, dates, and locations flashed across the screen, each one tied to a specific clone. Alex's own file appeared, and he froze. His DNA wasn't just a random sequence. It was a direct descendant of one of Earth's most legendary military commanders. The Zorathians hadn't just cloned soldiers, they'd resurrected the essence of humanity's greatest warriors, hoping to harness their skills and instincts for their own purposes. The revelation hit him like a punch to the gut. It explained so much: their combat prowess, their ability to adapt, their unyielding resilience, but it also raised questions. Why had the Zorathians chosen these specific individuals? And how had they even obtained their DNA in the first place? Alex's mind raced as he pieced together the implications. The Zorathians hadn't just stumbled upon Earth's genetic legacy, they'd sought it out. They'd studied humanity's history, its wars, its triumphs and failures, and they'd deliberately chosen the best of the best to replicate. But in doing so, they'd underestimated one crucial factor: the human spirit. The clones weren't just copies of ancient warriors, they were something more. They carried the memories, the instincts, and the unbreakable will of those who had come before them. And now, armed with this knowledge, Alex realized they had a responsibility, not just to themselves, but to the legacy they carried. He closed the data pad, his thoughts swirling. The Zorathians had tried to create the perfect soldiers, but they'd gotten something far more powerful instead. They'd gotten humanity, and humanity, as Alex knew all too well, was not something that could be controlled. As the transport sped through the stars, Alex made his way back to the others. The rescued clones were resting, their spirits lifted by their newfound freedom. Alex paused, looking at each of them in turn. They weren't just his comrades, they were his brothers and sisters. Bound by a shared history they were only beginning to understand. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but filled with quiet intensity. "We've got a lot to talk about," he said, holding up the data pad. "The Zorathians didn't just clone us. They brought back something ancient, something powerful, and it's time we figured out what that means for us and for everyone else out there." The room fell silent as Alex began to explain what he discovered. The clones listened intently, their expressions shifting from curiosity to awe as the weight of their origins sank in. They weren't just soldiers, they were a living connection to humanity's past, a past filled with courage, sacrifice, and an unyielding will to survive. As the conversation continued, a sense of purpose began to take hold. The clones weren't just fighting for their freedom anymore, they were fighting for something bigger, a legacy that stretched across the stars. And with that realization, their resolve hardened. The Zorathians had tried to create the ultimate soldiers, but they'd underestimated the very thing that made humanity so formidable: its ability to rise, to adapt, and to fight for what mattered most. And now, armed with the truth, the clones were ready to prove just how unstoppable that spirit could be. As the transport hurtled through the void, the team began to plan their next move. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, they understood what they were truly fighting for, and that knowledge, more than anything else, made all the difference. As the transport carrying the clones and rebels broke free from the prison ship's docking bay, a collective sigh of relief swept through the group, but that relief was short-lived. On the viewscreen, a sleek Zorathian cruiser emerged from the shadows of a nearby asteroid field, its weapons systems glowing ominously. At the helm stood Commander Veyra, her expression as cold and unyielding as the void itself. The rebels scrambled to evade the cruiser's targeting systems, but Veyra's ship was faster, more advanced. Within moments, they were caught in a tractor beam, their engines straining against the pull. The clones exchanged tense glances, their newfound sense of purpose clashing with the grim reality of their situation. Alex stepped forward, his eyes locked on the viewscreen. "Open a channel," he said, his voice calm but firm. The rebels hesitated, but one of them complied, and soon Veyra's face filled the screen. "Commander Veyra," Alex began, his tone measured but laced with an undercurrent of defiance. "You've chased us across the stars, hunted us like animals, but have you ever stopped to ask yourself why? What are you really fighting for?" Veyra's gaze narrowed, but she didn't respond immediately. Alex pressed on, his words cutting through the tension like a blade. "You think you're creating the perfect soldiers, but all you've done is awaken something you can't control. You've brought back humanity, not just our bodies, but our spirit, and that's something no amount of technology can replicate." For a moment, Veyra's mask of certainty seemed to falter. Her eyes flickered with something, doubt, perhaps, or the faintest hint of curiosity, but she quickly regained her composure. "You're nothing but a failed experiment," she snapped. "A mistake we intend to correct." Alex shook his head, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Is that what you tell yourself, that we're just mistakes, or is it easier to believe that than to face the truth? You've spent your life serving a system that sees you as nothing more than a tool. But you're more than that, Veyra. You always have been." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Veyra's jaw tightened, but she didn't cut the transmission. For the first time, there was a crack in her armor, a sliver of uncertainty that Alex knew he could exploit. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice softening. "You don't have to follow orders blindly. You have a choice, and deep down, you know that." The silence that followed was deafening. Veyra's expression was unreadable, but the tension in her posture spoke volumes. The clones and rebels watched, their breaths held, as the standoff stretched on. Finally, Veyra broke the silence. "This changes nothing," she said, her voice colder than ever, but there was a hesitation in her tone. a flicker of doubt that hadn't been there before. The transmission ended abruptly, and the Zorathian cruiser disengaged its tractor beam, pulling away into the void. The rebels let out a collective breath, their relief palpable. But Alex knew this wasn't over. He had planted a seed, and now it was up to Veyra to decide whether to let it grow. As the transport resumed its course, Alex turned to the others. "We've bought ourselves some time," he said, "but we need to be ready. Veyra may have doubts, but she's still dangerous, and the Zorathians won't stop until they've either captured us or wiped us out." The clones nodded, their resolve hardening once more. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would do so again, but now they carried with them something even more powerful than their combat skills or their shared history. They carried the knowledge that even their enemies were not beyond redemption, and as the stars stretched out before them, the clones and rebels prepared for the battles yet to come, knowing that the fight for their future was far from over. As the transport touched down at the rebel base, the clones and rebels stepped out into a flurry of activity. The base, hidden deep within a dense asteroid field, buzzed with urgency. Reports were coming in from all corners of the galaxy, and the mood was tense. Alex and the others were quickly ushered into a command center, where a holographic projection of the Zorathian superweapon dominated the room. The weapon was unlike anything they had ever seen, a massive, planet-sized construct bristling with energy conduits and weapon arrays. Its sheer scale was staggering, a testament to the Zorathians' technological prowess. But what truly sent a chill through the room was its purpose. This wasn't just a weapon of war, it was a tool of annihilation, capable of wiping out entire civilizations in a single strike. One of the rebel leaders stepped forward, his voice grave. "This is the Zorathians' ultimate weapon," he said. "They call it the World Breaker. If it's activated, it won't just destroy planets, it will destabilize entire star systems. Billions will die, and from what we've gathered, they're preparing to deploy it within the next few cycles." The room fell silent, the weight of the revelation settling over everyone. Alex stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the hologram. "We can't let that happen," he said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "This isn't just about us anymore. If we don't stop this weapon, everything we've fought for, everything humanity stands for, will be erased." The clones exchanged glances, their expressions hardening. They had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future of the galaxy itself. Alex turned to the group, his voice rising with conviction. "We've come this far because we've worked together, because we've refused to give up, no matter how hopeless things seem. This is our moment, our chance to prove that humanity isn't just a relic of the past. We're a force to be reckoned with, and we're not going to let the Zorathians decide the fate of the galaxy." The rebels and clones nodded, their determination mirrored in their eyes. They knew the risks, they knew the odds were stacked against them, but they also knew they had no choice. One of the rebels stepped forward, a tactical display flickering to life in front of him. "The World Breaker is heavily guarded," he said. "It's located in a fortified facility at the heart of Zorathian space. Getting in won't be easy, and getting out will be even harder, but if we can disable its core, we can render it useless." Alex studied the display, his mind racing. "We'll need a distraction," he said, "something big enough to draw their forces away from the facility, and we'll need to move fast. Once they realize what we're doing, they'll throw everything they've got at us." The rebels began outlining a plan, their voices blending into a chorus of strategy and determination. Alex listened intently, his thoughts focused on the task ahead. This wasn't just another mission. This was the culmination of everything they had fought for, the chance to strike a decisive blow against the Zorathians, and secure a future for themselves and countless others. As the meeting drew to a close, Alex addressed the group one final time. "This won't be easy," he said, "but nothing worth fighting for ever is. We've faced the impossible before, and we've come out stronger because of it. This time, we're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for everyone who can't fight for themselves, and we're not going to let them down." The clones and rebels erupted into cheers, their spirits lifted by Alex's words. They knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but they also knew they had something the Zorathians could never understand: the unbreakable spirit of humanity. As the group dispersed to prepare for the mission, Alex stood for a moment, his gaze fixed on the hologram of the Worldbreaker. The stakes had never been higher, but neither had their resolve. The final battle was coming, and they would be ready. As the mission began, the clones and rebels moved swiftly, their ships slipping through the asteroid field toward the Zorathian superweapon facility. The facility loomed ahead, a fortress of dark metal and glowing energy conduits, bristling with defenses. It was a daunting sight, but there was no turning back. Alex stood at the forefront, his voice cutting through the tension. "Remember, this isn't just about us. Every step we take, every fight we win, brings us closer to stopping the Worldbreaker. Stay focused, stay sharp, and trust each other. We've got this." The first wave of resistance hit hard. Zorathian drones swarmed the area, their laser fire lighting up the void. The clones and rebels returned fire, their ships weaving through the chaos with precision. Alex's team landed on the facility's outer platform, immediately met by a barrage of enemy soldiers. The battle was fierce, the air thick with the hum of energy weapons and the clash of combat. Alex fought with a determination that inspired those around him, his every move calculated and deliberate. He wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for the future. As they pushed deeper into the facility, the odds grew steeper. Automated turrets, energy barriers, and waves of Zorathian troops tested their resolve at every turn. But the clones and rebels pressed on, their teamwork and ingenuity turning the tide. At one point, the group found themselves pinned down in a narrow corridor, enemy fire raining down from both ends. Alex quickly assessed the situation, his mind racing. "We need to create a diversion," he said, turning to one of the rebels. "Can you overload that power conduit?" The rebel nodded, pulling a device from their pack. With a few quick adjustments, they sent a surge of energy through the conduit, causing a series of explosions that forced the Zorathians to retreat. The group seized the opportunity, charging forward with renewed vigor. As they neared the control center, the final obstacle stood before them, a massive energy gate, guarded by a squad of heavily armored Zorathian elites. Alex knew this would be their toughest challenge yet. He turned to the group, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "This is it. We've come too far to let anything stop us now. Stick together, watch each other's backs, and remember why we're here: for humanity, for the galaxy." The clones and rebels surged forward, their combined strength and determination overwhelming the elite guards. The energy gate fell, and the control center was within reach. Inside, the Worldbreaker's core pulsed with ominous energy, a stark reminder of what was at stake. Alex stepped forward, his eyes locked on the control panel. "We've got one shot at this," he said. "Let's make it count." As the group worked to disable the core, the facility shook with the force of the Zorathians' counterattack. Time was running out, but Alex's resolve never wavered. He knew this was their moment, their chance to change the course of history. The final battle was far from over, but with Alex leading the charge, the clones and rebels were ready to face whatever came next. Their courage and unity had brought them this far, and they weren't about to let anything stand in their way. As the group worked frantically to disable the Worldbreaker's core, the control center doors hissed open, revealing Commander Veyra. Her presence was commanding, her expression a mix of fury and something else, something uncertain. Alex stepped forward, his stance firm but his voice calm. "Veyra," he said, "this doesn't have to end like this. You know what this weapon will do. You know it's wrong." Veyra's eyes narrowed, her grip tightening on her weapon. "Wrong? You speak of right and wrong as if you understand our struggle. The Zorathians have fought for survival for generations. This weapon ensures our future." Alex shook his head, his tone steady but impassioned. "At what cost? You're sacrificing entire worlds, entire civilizations. Is that the future you want? A galaxy ruled by fear and destruction?" For a moment, Veyra hesitated. Her gaze flickered to the pulsing core, then back to Alex. "You don't understand," she said, her voice quieter now. "We've tried everything. Peace, diplomacy, alliances, all of it failed. This is the only way. Is it?" Alex countered, stepping closer. "Or is it just the easiest way? You've seen what humanity can do. You've seen our resilience, our ability to adapt, to unite. We're not your enemies, Veyra. We could be your allies." Veyra's expression shifted, the anger in her eyes giving way to doubt. "Allies," she repeated, almost to herself, "after everything we've done to you." Alex nodded. "It's not too late to change, to choose a different path. You don't have to be defined by the mistakes of your past. None of us do." The room seemed to hold its breath as Veyra weighed his words. The hum of the Worldbreaker's core grew louder, a reminder of the stakes. Finally, she lowered her weapon, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I've already gone too far?" Alex took another step forward, his voice firm but compassionate. "It's never too late to do the right thing. Help us stop this. Help us save lives, Zorathian, human, everyone." For a long moment, Veyra stood frozen, her internal struggle written across her face. Then, with a deep breath, she turned to the control panel. "Tell me what to do." The tension in the room shifted, the clones and rebels exchanging glances of cautious hope. Alex moved to her side, guiding her through the process of disabling the core. Together, they worked against the clock, the facility shaking violently as the Zorathian counterattack intensified. As the final sequence was initiated, Veyra looked at Alex, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I hope you're right about this, about us." Alex met her gaze, a small but determined smile on his lips. "We'll find out together." The core's energy began to dissipate, its ominous glow fading as the Worldbreaker's systems shut down. But the victory was short-lived. The facility's alarms blared, signaling an imminent collapse. The group had succeeded, but their escape was far from guaranteed. With Veyra now at their side, they prepared to face the final challenge, surviving the fallout of their actions. As the facility trembled under the strain of the collapsing superweapon, the group raced against time to escape. The self-destruct sequence was in motion, and the once imposing Worldbreaker now loomed as a ticking time bomb. Veyra, her resolve solidified, turned to Alex with a determined look. "There's no time to explain," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "I'll hold them off. You need to get everyone out." Alex hesitated, his instincts torn between the urgency of escape and the weight of Veyra's sacrifice. "We can't leave you behind," he insisted, his voice firm but tinged with desperation. "There has to be another way." Veyra shook her head, her expression resolute. "This is the only way. If I don't stay, they'll stop the sequence. The weapon will survive, and everything we've fought for will be lost." She placed a hand on his shoulder, her gaze unwavering. "You showed me there's still hope. Let me do this for all of us." The ground beneath them shook violently, debris raining down from the ceiling. The clones and rebels exchanged uneasy glances, the reality of their situation sinking in. Alex clenched his fists, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "You don't have to do this alone." Veyra offered a faint smile, the first genuine one she'd shown in what felt like an eternity. "I'm not alone. I'm doing this for a future I never thought possible. Now go before it's too late." With a final nod, Alex turned and rallied the group, leading them toward the exit. Veyra watched them go, her heart heavy but her spirit unbroken. She turned to face the advancing Zorathian forces, her weapon raised. "This ends now," she muttered under her breath, her voice carrying a quiet defiance. As the group reached the safety of the outer corridors, a deafening explosion rocked the facility. The shockwave sent them sprawling, the blinding light of the Worldbreaker's destruction illuminating the sky. Alex scrambled to his feet, his eyes fixed on the collapsing structure. "Veyra," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The clones and rebels stood in silence, the weight of Veyra's sacrifice settling over them. She had given everything to ensure their victory, her final act a testament to the power of redemption and the enduring strength of the human spirit. As the dust settled and the echoes of the explosion faded, Alex turned to the group, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "We honor her by moving forward. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning." With the Zorathian superweapon destroyed and Veyra's legacy etched into their hearts, the group pressed on, their path forward uncertain but their determination unshakable. The galaxy had been forever changed, and the fight for a better future had only just begun. As the echoes of the explosion faded into the vastness of space, the clones and rebels emerged from the chaos, their faces a mix of relief and sorrow. The once imposing Zorathian facility was now a smoldering ruin, its destruction a stark reminder of the cost of their victory. Alex stood at the forefront, his gaze lingering on the wreckage, his thoughts heavy with the weight of Veyra's sacrifice. "She gave us a chance," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of gratitude and grief. "A chance to build something better." The group gathered around him, their silence speaking volumes. For a moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the starship engines as they prepared to leave the battlefield behind. One of the rebels, a tall alien with scars marking years of resistance, stepped forward. "Veyra's sacrifice won't be forgotten," they said, their voice steady but filled with emotion. "She showed us that even in the darkest times, there's hope." "That's something no weapon can destroy," Alex nodded, his resolve hardening. "She believed in us, in what we could become. We owe it to her to honor that belief." He turned to the group, his voice rising with determination. "This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about creating a future where no one has to live in fear. A future where species like ours can stand together, not as enemies, but as allies." The clones and rebels exchanged glances, their shared grief transforming into a shared purpose. One of the clones, a young woman with fiery determination in her eyes, stepped forward. "Veyra gave us more than a victory," she said. "She gave us a chance to redefine what it means to be strong. To fight not just for ourselves, but for each other." As the starship lifted off, carrying them away from the wreckage, the group began to share stories of Veyra, her courage, her doubts, and her ultimate redemption. Each tale painted a picture of a leader who had found her humanity in the most unlikely of places, and whose final act had bridged the gap between species. Her sacrifice became a rallying cry, a symbol of what could be achieved when individuals chose unity over division. In the days that followed, the clones and rebels worked together to establish a new base, their shared loss forging bonds stronger than any weapon or strategy. Alex often found himself reflecting on Veyra's words, her belief in a future where the galaxy could be more than a battleground. She saw something in us, he said to the group one evening as they gathered around a makeshift campfire. Something worth fighting for. Let's make sure we live up to that. The group nodded, their faces illuminated by the flickering light. Though the road ahead was uncertain, they carried Veyra's legacy with them, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit and the spirit of unity could prevail. As they looked out at the stars, they knew their journey was far from over, but for the first time, they felt ready to face it together. As the starship descended toward the lush, green expanse of their new home, the atmosphere aboard was a mix of exhaustion and quiet hope. The planet below, untouched by the scars of war, seemed to promise a fresh start, a chance to build something lasting. Alex stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "This is it," he said, his voice steady but carrying the weight of everything they'd endured. "This is where we begin again." The clones and rebels worked tirelessly to establish the colony, their shared purpose driving them forward. Structures rose from the ground, not as fortresses, but as homes and gathering places. The air buzzed with activity, but beneath it all was a sense of unity that had been hard-won. Alex often found himself pausing to watch the progress, a small smile tugging at his lips. "We're not just building a colony," he remarked to one of the clones. "We're building a legacy, one that honors who we are and who we can become." The rebels, too, played a crucial role. Their knowledge of alien technology and survival skills proved invaluable, and their commitment to the cause never wavered. "We've fought side by side," one of the rebel leaders said to Alex during a break in the work. "And now, we'll build side by side. This isn't just your colony, it's ours. A place where our species can thrive together." As the days turned into weeks, the colony began to take shape. Fields were planted, water systems installed, and a central meeting hall became the heart of their new community. It was there, one evening, that Alex gathered everyone to speak. The room was filled with clones, rebels, and even a few curious alien species who had heard of their mission. "We've come a long way," Alex began, his voice carrying through the hall. "But this isn't just about survival anymore. It's about creating a future where no one has to live in fear. A future where we can honor our human heritage not as soldiers, but as builders, as creators, as allies." The room erupted in applause, but Alex wasn't finished. "Veyra believed in us," he continued, his tone softening. "She believed we could be more than what the Zorathians intended, and now it's up to us to prove her right. To show that the human spirit and the spirit of unity can't be controlled or destroyed. It's what brought us here, and it's what will carry us forward." As the meeting ended, the group dispersed, their steps lighter, their resolve stronger. The colony was more than just a refuge. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when individuals chose to stand together. And as Alex looked out over the bustling settlement, he felt a quiet sense of pride. The road ahead would be long, and challenges would surely arise. But for the first time, he felt certain they were on the right path, a path that honored their past while building a brighter future. As the colony continued to grow, a new discovery began to shift their focus. While expanding the settlement, a group of clones stumbled upon something unexpected, an ancient structure buried beneath the planet's surface. Its design was unlike anything they'd seen before, with intricate carvings and symbols that seemed to pulse faintly with energy. Alex was called to the site immediately, and as he stood before the entrance, a strange sense of familiarity washed over him. "This isn't Zorathian," he said, running a hand over the weathered stone. "This is human, or at least it was made by someone who knew us." Inside, the structure revealed a treasure trove of artifacts, tools, weapons, and fragments of what appeared to be a star map. The clones and rebels worked together to carefully extract and examine each item, their excitement growing with every new find. These symbols, one of the rebels said, pointing to the carvings on the walls, they match some of the patterns we've seen in other ruins across the galaxy. But this is different. It's like a piece of a much larger puzzle. Alex studied the star map, his mind racing. The coordinates etched into its surface pointed to distant star systems, some of which were marked with symbols that resembled Earth's ancient languages. "If this is what I think it is," he said slowly, "it's not just a map, it's a record of where humanity, or something like us, has been, and maybe where we're meant to go." The discovery sparked a wave of speculation and debate among the colony. Could there be other human colonies out there, hidden among the stars? Were these artifacts remnants of a civilization that had once thrived across the galaxy, only to vanish without a trace? "We've always thought of Earth as our only home," Alex said during a meeting with the colony's leaders. "But what if we're part of something bigger? What if humanity's story didn't end on Earth, it just began there?" The artifacts became a focal point of their research, with teams dedicated to deciphering the carvings and analyzing the technology they'd uncovered. Each new piece of information added to the growing sense that their journey was far from over. "This changes everything," one of the clones remarked as they examined a fragment of the star map. "If there are others out there, other humans, other colonies, we need to find them. We need to know what happened to them and what it means for us." As the days passed, the colony's purpose began to shift. No longer just a refuge, it became a hub of exploration and discovery. Alex found himself drawn to the ancient structure time and time again, his thoughts consumed by the possibilities it represented. "We've built a home here," he said to the group one evening, "but now we have a new mission: to uncover the truth about our past, and to find out if we're truly alone in this galaxy." The discovery of the artifacts had opened a door to a future filled with questions and possibilities, and as the colony prepared to take its next steps, one thing was clear: their journey was just beginning. The stars, once a distant dream, now beckoned with the promise of answers and perhaps a new chapter in the story of humanity. As the colony gathered beneath the vast, starlit sky, a sense of anticipation filled the air. Alex stepped forward, his presence commanding attention as he prepared to address the group. "Today," he began, his voice steady and strong, "we stand not just as survivors, but as pioneers. What we've discovered here, these artifacts, this history, it's more than just a glimpse into the past. It's a reminder of who we are and who we can become." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "We've faced challenges that would have broken others. We've fought for our freedom, our identity, and our future. And through it all, one thing has remained constant: our unity. It's what brought us together, what kept us strong, and what will carry us forward. Whether we were born on Earth in a lab or on a distant world, we are bound by something greater than our origins. We are bound by the spirit of humanity." Alex's gaze swept across the crowd, meeting the eyes of clones, rebels, and even former Zorathians who had joined their cause. Resilience isn't just about enduring hardship, it's about rising above it. It's about finding strength in each other, in our shared purpose, and that purpose is clear. We are not just building a colony, we are building a legacy that honors the past, embraces the present, and shapes the future. He gestured toward the ancient structure behind him, its carvings glowing faintly in the twilight. "These artifacts are more than relics, they are a call to action, a call to explore, to discover, and to connect. They remind us that we are part of something vast and extraordinary. And they challenge us to ask, what lies beyond the stars? Are there others like us, waiting to be found? Are there stories yet untold, waiting to be shared?" The crowd stirred, their excitement palpable. Alex's voice grew firmer, more impassioned. We are not alone in this galaxy, not because we've found others, but because we have each other. And together, we can achieve anything. We can bridge the gaps between species, between worlds, between the past and the future. We can show the universe that the spirit of humanity, of resilience, of unity, of hope is unbreakable. He raised a hand, his gesture both a promise and a challenge. So let us move forward, not as individuals, but as one. Let us honor those who came before us by building a future worthy of their sacrifices. Let us prove that no matter where we come from, no matter what we've endured, we are stronger together, and let us never forget, the stars are not just our destination, they are our destiny. As Alex concluded his speech, the crowd erupted into cheers, their voices echoing across the colony. The clones, the rebels, and even the former Zorathians stood united, their differences overshadowed by a shared sense of purpose. In that moment, it was clear, their journey was far from over. The stars awaited, and with them, the promise of a brighter future, one they would build together. As the cheers of the colony faded into the night, Alex stood alone for a moment, gazing up at the endless expanse of stars above. The weight of their journey pressed on him, not as a burden, but as a reminder of how far they had come. He thought back to the sterile halls of the Zorathian facility, where he and the others had first awakened, confused and afraid. Now they were here, free, united and thriving. It was almost poetic, he realized, that the Zorathians' attempt to create the perfect soldiers had instead given birth to something far more powerful, the unyielding spirit of humanity. Alex's reflection deepened as he considered the irony of it all. The Zorathians had sought to control life itself, to mold it into a weapon, but in their arrogance, they had underestimated the very essence of what it meant to be human. Resilience, creativity, compassion, these were not traits that could be engineered or replicated. They were born from struggle, from connection, from the shared experiences that bound people together. And in the end, it was these qualities that had allowed the clones to defy their creators, to forge their own path, and to build something truly extraordinary. As he walked through the colony, Alex saw the fruits of their labor everywhere. The ancient human artifacts they had uncovered were now being studied, their secrets slowly unraveled. The bonds between clones, rebels, and even former Zorathians grew stronger with each passing day, and the colony itself, a testament to their determination, stood as a beacon of hope in a galaxy that had once seemed so cold and indifferent. It was a reminder that no matter how dark the night, the dawn would always come. Alex's thoughts turned to the future. The stars above were no longer just distant lights, they were possibilities. Each one represented a new world to explore, a new story to uncover, a new connection to make. The artifacts they had found hinted at a larger galactic history, one that stretched far beyond their understanding. And while the journey ahead would undoubtedly be filled with challenges, Alex knew they were ready. They had faced the impossible and emerged stronger. Together, they could face anything. As he stood there, a sense of quiet determination settled over him. The Zorathians had tried to create soldiers, but what they had created instead was something far greater, a family. A family bound not by blood, but by shared purpose and unbreakable resolve. And as long as that spirit endured, Alex knew they would never truly be alone. The stars were calling, and with them, the promise of a future filled with hope, discovery, and endless possibilities. If you enjoyed this journey through the stars, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our next adventure. Until then, keep looking up, because the universe is waiting.